What's up, movie fans? Guys, today we're going to be talking about a show I've never talked about before on my channel, Invincible.
Dude, seriously?
What's the issue?
You're reviewing Invincible without me.
Me.
The guy who loves this comic and thinks this is the greatest comic of all time. Come on. That's screwed up.
I think I was gonna call you totally.
Oh.
Yeah, I was getting to that.
Okay. Everyone, it's me, movie friend, and this is...
Guys, today we are talking about Invincible. This is a superhero show based on a comic book, one of the few superhero comic books that I'm aware of that isn't Marvel or DC. I decided to bring on Movie Friend today because not only is he a massive fan of the Invincible comics and the show, he's also the one who recommended the show to me, so it wouldn't feel right to not have him in this video.
Yeah, I've been a fan of Invincible, I think, ever since the first teaser trailer of the show came out. I thought it looked super interesting, so I started reading the comics, and I fell in love with it. The characters, the art, everything about it. And it'll help that the writer of the comic, Robert Kirkman, has written some other fantastic comic books that people should definitely check out. He's the creator of a little indie show people don't know of called The Walking Dead. He wrote the comic for that. It's a little indie comic too. It's not super well known. He's written Ant-Man and many others. So yeah, if you check out the show, you should also really check out the comic and Robert Kirkman's other work, as it is incredibly good.
So yeah, today we're going to be talking about Invincible Season 2 specifically. One thing about this review, I think the way that we're going to structure it is we're kind of going to go through each major character and the plot lines related to them in just like an order that I think kind of flows together.
Yeah.
But before that, I just want to give each of our general thoughts on the season. So what were your general thoughts on the season?
I thought it was fantastic. I don't know if I think it's better than season 1. I don't know. Both seasons are great. And also, just shortly, the Academy of Special is also really, really good. You should check that out too. Well, I'll go on my thoughts more, but I liked everything about it. I thought villains were great, characters were great, voice acting was fantastic. I do have a problem with how long it took for me to have to watch this.
So my general thoughts on season 2, I thought that season 2 was really, really good. In terms of whether I thought this or season 1 was better, that's kind of hard for me because I think the issue is that season 2, I think, has better individual episodes.
Yeah, I agree.
But as an overall story, I think season 1 flows together much better. Season 2 and just the entire show in general is just so interesting to me because this is a superhero show that's basically advertised as being more mature than other superhero shows. And when it says that, it really means it, not just in a way of, oh, there's a lot more blood and gore in this show than other superhero shows. Like, the themes it touches on and the things that it decides to explore with its characters are genuinely more mature and more interesting than a lot of other superhero shows.
Yeah, one of the biggest things I hate when people compare Invincible to other things is comparing it to another, a show that's great, comic not good at all. The Boys. I've never seen The Boys.
I
have, and I think the show's fantastic. I think it's a really good show. But when people compare it, I get a little annoyed by it because, like, they are not the same show. Yes, both of them do touch on more mature topics than Marvel and DC. Well, Marvel and DC, of course, have touched on topics, but specifically media, that is just movies, TV shows. Comics, of course, can touch on whatever. The Boys is a lot more just, oh, it's mature because it's gory. There's swearing,
that's what
sex,
I've heard.
And all that. Invincible, it isn't just that. There's some of that. There is a ton of gore. There is a ton of it. Warning for that. If you don't like gore, or just get a little queasy about that, do not watch it. Avoid this one. And The Boys. Avoid both of them. Yeah, it is more mature. There's a ton of hope in it. I can say that. It is hopeful. They have all the themes of it. It's not like The Boys when it comes to like a deconstruction of superheroes. It's very much still a love for superheroes, and Robert Kirkman wrote it like that.
Yeah, that's another thing that I really love about it. Like, it explores kind of like the troubles that each of these characters face on their journeys of being superheroes, but all of them kind of remain optimistic, and we'll talk
Except
about
for a
that.
specific few.
We'll talk about that when we get into those characters. But
Yeah.
I guess just starting out with all the main characters of this show. First off, let's talk about
Mark
the
Grayson.
main character, Invincible, Mark Grayson.
I think he's great. Mark Grayson is one of my favorite comic characters ever. I think he is such an interesting protagonist, just such an interesting character. His mental state that he has to go through throughout the whole entire book. He goes through so much stuff. He has gone through awful things in his life. That's obviously a lot of that is later on in the book, that it gets into very sad and depressing things, and I'm not going to spoil that for anyone. But specifically for what he goes through in this season, if you watch season 1, you would know he finds out his father is a mass murderer, genocidal alien. Oh yeah, sorry, spoilers.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
I mean, we are talking about season 2, so
Yeah,
the assumption
but-
is that you've seen
Yes,
season
yes,
1.
but still, spoiler warning for the show and stuff. His father killed the basic, the Avengers Justice League of...
Yeah, the Guardians of the Globe.
Guardians of the Globe, the Avengers Justice League esque team.
And then he killed a whole
He killed
bunch
a
of innocent
whole lot
people.
of people. He called his own wife and the mom, Debbie, of Mark, a pet.
Yeah.
Omni-Man was evil.
Yes.
He was an evil person, and what I love about it is just Mark's will and determination to stop his dad at whatever cost it takes.
This is something that I think is a recurring theme throughout Invincible, so I'm going to touch on it a lot. But I think in this season in particular, so much about it, with so many different characters, is it's about getting over trauma.
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah. So in this season, a lot of Mark's struggle as a character is with the discoveries he made about his father and the impact that it's leaving on him. And just like his will to kind of continue even in spite of that. One of my favorite lines in this entire season is very late in it. Like, I think it was episode 7 where Rex actually says to him, I don't think anyone could have come back from what you came back from, but he just continues to push through.
That's why I love that his name is Invincible. It's not because he's physically invincible. This guy gets his ass kicked so much throughout the whole show. It is insane what he goes through, but he still always finds a way to win somehow. In season 1, when he fought his father, he didn't win through physically beating him. He fought through using the one weakness Nolan had, which was the love that he actually did have for Mark and Debbie. In season 2, he beats Anissa through the hypocrisy of the Viltrumites and how she was wrong the whole time. And there's only one fight in this whole show where he beats someone physically, and
which I think we want to get to
later. But
yeah,
you see how when he fights someone physically, that is more trauma on him than how he has fought anyone else.
Yes. So getting into the second main character of the season, I would say Debbie, Mark's mother, who in this season kind of has a similar arc to him, where she's also getting over the trauma of discovering that her husband is a mass murdering psychopath. And I really liked what they did with her.
I did too.
I really like the fact that, like, throughout the first half of the season, she just goes through, like, so much pain as she's, like, not only struggling with this trauma, but there's basically nobody who she can talk to about it, because she can't tell anybody that Nolan was Omni-Man. And then, like, halfway through the season, it's basically after that conversation she has with Art, where she kind of starts to like get over it and realize that she doesn't need Nolan and that she can still do this on her own. I just found all of that very compelling.
One other big thing that this season puts on Mark and Debbie, finding out that Nolan now has a new child with another person from another, basically a bug alien from another universe. And that's a giant thing that they, Mark and Debbie have to go through, is the fact that, like, their father has somehow, some way moved on. Even though, spoilers, at the end of the season, you find out he hasn't moved on at all. But what Debbie has to go through with the kid whose name's Oliver is really good. I really like it, with the paranoia she has throughout the whole show. With, like, one of my favorite scenes was the scene with the nannies, where she's basically, like, telling them, leave. If you work with any government official with Cecil, I don't want you touching my son.
And I don't
want you near my child.
I love the fact that when she finally does actually hire a nanny, it's just because that one was honest with her.
Yeah, it wasn't
and told her up front, yeah, I'm working with Cecil, but hear me out.
And we'll get into it later with another character, but I love what Debbie does in the final episode with Oliver, and how she just, you can tell it isn't her child, but she loves him as much as she loves Mark.
Yes.
She will take care of this child just like how she took care of Mark. Yeah. And I think that's a fantastic,
that's really cool
character moment for her.
So the next character that we're actually going to talk about, rounding out the Grayson family, is Nolan.
Omni-Man.
Who doesn't
He's
really
not in
appear a lot in this season,
which
but
I think was a good thing.
Yes.
As he was basically the deuteragonist of season 1. It was basically about Mark and him.
But the thing about him is that even though he doesn't appear a lot in this season, when he does appear, it is so impactful.
Like, he's a character that doesn't show up much, but when it does, you know something serious is going to happen.
Especially at, like, the halfway point of the season in episode 4, where you learn that he's kind of moved on from Mark and Debbie, although, like you said, not really. And yeah, it's just really fascinating, the stuff that they did with him, because you can see that through his family that he had on Earth and the new family that he has on the new planet, he kind of actually starts feeling remorse for his actions and realizing that these are real people that he's affecting. And their lives, despite being incredibly short compared to his, do matter. So yeah, that's just really fascinating.
One of my favorite scenes in the season was very early on, episode 1 or episode 2, with the comparison of Nolan flying through space and Debbie just walking, and them both, heavy subject here, contemplating killing themselves.
Yeah.
Like, my favorite shot in, I think, the season is the one of Nolan just staring at the black hole, which I think is supposed to represent his life, or, like, also just represent how he feels. He has nothing.
Yes.
He left everyone behind. Every friend he ever made, his family, anyone. He's left it behind. And I just love when it cuts to then Debbie just standing there on the bridge, just, like, thinking, like, what has my life become? Like, is there any meaning left? And that also can go into Mark, what he goes through throughout the season too.
Next up, let's talk about Amber, Mark's girlfriend throughout the first season and this one, and it turns out not past this point, because they break up. So one thing that I want to mention real quick, I didn't like Amber in season 1. With that plot line, I was fine with it for the majority of the season, up until the reveal that Amber knew Mark was invincible the whole time. And after that happened, I was just really, like, annoyed with her, because even though Mark probably should have told her sooner, she still knew why he couldn't be with her all the time, and she still seemingly didn't care.
The character has been a big talking point for over 2 years now. 3 years. The whole thing with Amber knowing that he was invincible. My personal thoughts on it, I thought it was not the greatest writing.
Yeah.
I don't hate I actually like the character. I like Amber. I do think she's better this season significantly because she has more to do. But I think at a certain extent, I understand how she feels. She's not a superhero. She's just a person. She knows her boyfriend is running off. They talk about it a lot in this season. That can kind of get on your nerves.
Yeah.
For a while. Like, sure, I don't think, like, her getting mad was the greatest decision. I think it could have been handled a little bit better, aka she doesn't know.
That would have been much better, just all around.
Yeah, just her not knowing, but it's whatever. I actually have never hated the character of Amber, so I don't really get the hate for her.
So yeah, what you said, I actually mentioned the fact that I didn't like her in season 1 to say that I actually really liked the relationship between Mark and Amber in this season. I specifically like the way that it falls apart because it makes so much sense and it's so well written. Both of them try so hard
to make it work.
But at the end of the day, Amber is right with what she says in the second to last episode of the season. She has no agency whatsoever in the relationship because she can't be mad at Mark for going off to save people's lives, but she also can't be happy in a relationship where that happens. So yeah, that's just really well written and I really liked that. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Amber.
Yeah, that's basically my thoughts too. I thought that scene at the end of episode 7 was beautiful. Of just them realizing it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
The way life goes for them, it can't work.
Yeah.
What happens with Amber later on in the comic is, I don't know if they'll adapt it. It is very, very sad and just...
He told me a little bit about it, but I guess we won't touch on it just in case, like, spoilers, but yeah.
But it is really sad, and I don't know if they'll adapt it. I'm not gonna say if they should or shouldn't. What happens to Amber is bad, obviously, but it is a very sensitive subject that is put on in the comic, and I don't know if they'll do it.
Next up, I'm going to very briefly touch on this character because I don't have a lot to say about him, and I doubt that Movie Friend does either. William is in the show still. He's just kind of there to be Mark's friend. He does have a little bit of a romantic relationship going on with, I think his name is Rick. But the stuff with Rick, I actually want to talk about later with a different character.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I think is kind of funny, but yeah.
The character of William, I'm going to get into the character of William just because they changed a lot about him. In the show, William is openly gay. Yeah. That is shown from, I think, probably the first few episodes. He is openly gay. Again, nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with William being openly gay. But the comic came out in the early 2000s, I think 2003. So one of the big things William went through in that was he dated Eve while Mark was with Amber.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. And throughout the book, he starts to realize that he is gay.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
And it's well written, in my opinion. I don't think it's awful, but I understand why they made that change. It's 2024 now.
It does make sense.
It's a common thing. It's a lot more, the culture around it is more accepting than it ever was in the early 2000s. So I understand why they did that, but I feel like with that, just from a writing standpoint, that takes away a lot for the character of him. Just like an arc for him to go through. But again, nothing wrong with them making him openly gay now. So yeah, I wish they had more to have him in. I know he's mostly just comedic relief, which is fine. I'm fine with comedic relief characters, but I do wish there was a little bit more done with him and his relationship with Rick.
Next up, I feel like this is a character that we're both going to have a lot to say about, Angstrom Levy. So, he's basically the main villain of this season.
I love Angstrom.
And I really liked what they did with him. One thing that I will say, I wish that they had
a little bit more
bit more with him, because he's only in like a select few episodes, most prominently in the first and the last one.
Yeah.
But still, what they did with him was great, because in the first episode, you learn about the motivation, why he's doing what he's doing. He basically has his villain origin story in that episode, where he basically gets all of these different alternate universe versions of himself merged together in his mind, and he doesn't know what's real anymore, and he thinks that Mark is like the villain of his story, and he needs to defeat Mark.
Basically, he thinks what Mark thinks about Angstrom.
Yeah.
Angstrom is Mark's enemy, and Mark is Angstrom's enemy. They hate each other. Well, I don't want to say Mark hated him until the last episode, but Angstrom is basically the reverse Flash for... That's basically the reverse Flash for Invincible. He is the biggest hater of all time. This guy has the guts to break into Mark's house, kidnap his mom and his brother.
Break his mom's arm.
Break his mom's arm.
It is terrible.
And Debbie still finds a way to kick ass and beat the crap out of Angstrom Levy a little bit, and I love that.
I feel like what I was saying, in the first episode, they established the motivation really well.
Yeah.
But I still wasn't ready for how much of just a threatening, hateable antagonist he was in the final episode. And it leads up to that big moment at the end, which, major spoilers, where you get a moment that's really satisfying, but also horrifying at the same time, where Mark beats Angstrom Levy to death in the same way that Omni-Man almost did to him in the first season.
And then he says the iconic words all Invincible fans love to say, "I thought you were stronger."
Yeah, it is like a horrifying moment.
I love it because they do the thing exactly that they did with Omni-Man season 1, where Mark looks at his hands and sees the blood dripping down. But unlike Omni-Man in the moment, he realizes instantly what he did was awful.
And I also want to say, this is something that somebody online pointed out, and I don't remember what their name was, but I would give them credit for this, because this is something I didn't even notice the first time around. In the scene when Mark is first fighting Angstrom, they play this heroic melody.
I heard that.
Where it's like, oh, Mark is triumphing and he's beating the villain. And then as he starts to actually beat Angstrom to death, the music cuts off. And the thing that the person said is, it's basically as if the music itself is shocked by how far Mark is going.
It's not a heroic moment.
That is such a cool detail.
Mark got those genes from his father.
Yeah.
He got the beating someone to a pulp genes. It's such a good scene.
Yes.
It is a fantastic scene. It's also fantastic in the comic, too. To a certain... I'm going to defend Angstrom Levy for a very quick second.
Really interesting.
I understand where he's coming from a tiny bit about... Mark's pretty evil in some other universes.
Yeah,
the guy's insane in a couple of universes. Not the main Mark. Not the Mark we care for. Not the one that we want to see succeed and win. Obviously, unjustifiable what he does. But to the tiniest extent, I kind of understand.
Yeah.
That he has all this info in his head and he doesn't know what's real or not, basically.
So I'm gonna speed through these next characters because they're not that important, and also this video's getting really long.
Yeah.
The Mauler twins.
They're fun.
Think they're funny, entertaining villains. That's really all I have to say about them.
They're also comic relief, and they're fantastic.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love chicken pot pie Mauler twins?
Yeah.
His favorite time, chicken pot pie.
I did love, like, the entire plot line of the one Mauler twin actually getting the scars, and then the other one having this existential crisis where he realizes, oh crap, you really are the original, and you can prove it now. That was really funny.
They're fun.
The final, like, villainous characters in this season that we need to talk about are obviously all of the other Viltrumites.
Yeah.
Who I don't really have a lot to say about them other than it's just, like, really scary to see what they can truly do in this season, because every time they come across Mark or Alan or even Nolan, they beat the crap out of them, and it's terrifying.
Yeah, they're horrifying. They're genuinely creepy in some moments.
Yes.
Alan? Should we talk about my boy?
Alan
the alien?
Alan.
I love Alan the alien. He's awesome.
I feel like, obviously, like, from a character development standpoint, Mark and Debbie are my favorite characters in this show.
Yeah.
But if we're talking
level,
about just, like, my favorite character in general, I've got to go
Alan.
with Alan. He's so much fun.
Seth Rogen, speaking very quickly, voice acting in this is phenomenal.
Yes.
Genuinely incredible when Mark is beating Angstrom, when the strain in his voice when he says, "Never hurt my family again, never touch them," is incredible by Stephen Yeun. Sterling K. Brown as Angstrom Levy, also phenomenal. One of the best voice acting roles I've seen in this whole show. And J.K. Simmons, for as little as he was also really good.
Yes. Now I guess we can quickly go through all of the other heroes that aren't Mark. So starting off, Adam Eve. A lot of her development kind of happens in the background of this season. It's not really, like, heavily focused on.
And also the fact she had an episode, or like a special too, that came out as practically promotion for the new season.
But I still really liked what they did with her in this season. Her entire thing in this show is she just wants to help as many people as possible. And she kind of has to question towards the beginning of this season if she's really helping, because the things that her powers can do are legitimately dangerous sometimes.
Screw her parents, though.
Her
parents in all the media. Especially the father. Just horrible people. You're horrible people.
You're not even kidding. I find it hilarious that this is the show that features Omni-Man, and yet I hate Adam Eve's parents more than him. That's just hilarious to me.
But I think Eve is a fantastic character in the comics and in the show. I pray they let her do more cool stuff with her powers than they do in the comics. Sometimes in the comics it feels like she's just, spoilers, Invincible's girlfriend. That I think it's pretty obvious what's going to happen next season with those two, if you've seen the final episode. Eve is awesome. Her powers, I know, she's OP. Her power is insane.
Speaking of the special did an especially good job at illustrating how cool
insane.
How cool her powers are.
I love that special.
Moving on to one of my favorite characters in this season, Rexplode.
He talked about Alan's his favorite comedic character. Rexplode's mine. I love Rexplode. He is hilarious.
But not only is he hilarious, he goes through so much character development in this season where he's been a jerk throughout this entire show to everyone. He's been a funny jerk, but he's still been a jerk. And in this season, it takes him going through an incredibly dramatic experience to truly realize just how terrible he is to everyone, and realize that he needs to turn his life around.
Basically what happens is the Lizard League breaks into the Guardians of the Globe base, and throughout it you think the Guardians of the Globe are thinking, oh, this will be easy. They massacre them so quickly. Spoilers, you think Shrinking Ray dies in an episode. She almost gets crushed to death. You think Duplicate is dead. And Rex gets shot in the head. He loses his hand, gets shot in the head, and survives that.
Yes.
He is him.
And I think what's so shocking about it is throughout season 1, they do it several times, and in the Adam Eve special, they make jokes about the Lizard League.
Yeah.
The Lizard League are said by everybody to be the stupidest team of villains.
Yeah.
And then they show up in this season, and the Guardians think, oh, this is gonna be easy. And then the Lizard League just destroys them, and it is utterly shocking.
And I like it because it shows, one, how OP Invincible and Omni-Man were, that every time the Lizard League showed up, they could just show up, just spawn in basically, destroy them, and just how good of teamwork the original Guardians of the Globe have compared to the new ones.
Yes.
Yet again, they show it, that old team was just insanely good at what they did.
And then Omni-Man came in and just destroyed them all.
Yeah, he wanted to kill them. I love the fact that this man gets shot in the head, and his first words to the guy are, "You shot me in the head, you dick." And it just punches him.
Yeah.
He's not in shock, he's just like, oh.
Well, he is still in shock, but he just goes crazy
he
on
punches
the guy.
this guy with bone.
Yeah,
Not
because
even
he
a hand,
doesn't
just
have a
with
hand
sharp
there.
bone. Grabs him and just decks him in the face, and I was watching it, and I was just sat there, and I was like,
yeah.
Because I totally forgot that happened in the book. I just sat there, and I was like, oh my god, I forgot this happened.
It is so cool.
This guy do a whole...
It's horrifying, but it's so
yeah.
cool. Briefly touching on the other Guardians of the Globe, I know you said that you find this entire plot line to be kind of creepy.
Yeah.
But I actually kind of think that the stuff with Robot and Monster Girl is weirdly kind of wholesome, because it's like, yeah.
Wait until the end of the comic.
I do
doesn't
know,
get wholesome.
I do know some of the stuff that happens later on, but in this season, it's kind of like Robot is experiencing all of these human emotions for the first time, and Monster Girl is kind of walking him through it.
Yeah, this is like the first time in his life he's felt emotion.
Yeah, and I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it was good. I thought you were talking about the other creepy relationship.
The other creepy relationship.
The actual one that's genuinely creepy. Immortal and Duplicate.
Yes.
That is genuinely disgusting in a weird way.
Yeah, I guess I can kind of get behind it because I don't know.
It's like in my opinion, it's like your great grandfather getting with some like 20-year-old. Like, come on, that's disgusting.
It's really weird.
She's with the Abraham Lincoln in the Invincible. Remember that. Immortal was Abraham Lincoln. She is sleeping with the former president of the United, one of the greatest presidents of the United States. She is dating him.
And
dating him.
That's hilarious.
She is with Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah. There's several other Guardians in this season that do practically nothing, if we're being honest. Shapesmith is
actually goes through
I'll give him an exception because he's a ton of fun in this season.
Oh, yeah, he's fun.
Ben Schwartz is just hilarious.
He's awesome.
And then the other ones, Black Samson, he's just kind of there.
Yeah.
Same with Bulletproof.
Bulletproof gets way more to do later in the comic. Spoiler, he's kind of becomes the new Rexplode and being a douche.
Oh, interesting.
He's kind of
in this season, I was just kind of like, why is this guy even here? He doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And then there's also Shrinking Ray, who the most
could have had the worst death ever.
The most interesting thing about her in this entire show so far has been the fact that she almost died. So that's kind of sad.
And we all thought she did for a while.
Yeah. And then the final characters, I think this is finally the end. The final characters who I want to quickly go through are Cecil and, surprisingly enough, one of the best characters in this season, Donald. Yeah, Cecil continues being like the same, like, incredibly morally ambiguous character that he always is, where technically he's a good guy who is organizing all of these superhero teams and everything. But
he does some really sketchy stuff.
Yeah.
Really sketchy stuff a lot of the time. Let's go through the list so far. You got the guy who kidnapped drunk college kids and turned them into robots to make minions for him.
Yes.
Kind of screwed over Mark and Debbie.
Yes.
A couple times.
Several times.
Several times.
He has agents watching Mark and Debbie's house 24/7.
Like, I get it. He wants to keep them safe, but like...
At what cost at that point?
Hires like 300 nannies that basically watch over Oliver too.
And I love the fact that Debbie's able to sniff them out immediately.
And going into Donald, making him forget that he has died over 100 times, and making him think he's been alive this whole time.
And the stuff with Donald, so I mentioned earlier that so much of this season is about characters getting over trauma. And it's so fascinating that out of all characters, Donald factors into that because he realizes that he's actually died 30 plus times in the
some
past.
of the worst ways you'll ever see, man.
Yeah.
Holy God,
and that he's been put back together so many times and had his memory erased.
That he's basically more machine than he is human.
That's like really fascinating, and it also leads to this really surprising and touching moment where he actually helps Rick kind of get over his trauma.
He prevents Rick from committing suicide.
Yes, and that was really fascinating to me, that they managed to factor Donald into this season and make him one of the most interesting characters.
Yeah, I've always thought that scene was really good.
Yes.
It's very beautiful. The music also in the show is fantastic. The music in that scene was great.
Yeah. I guess the one final thing that we can quickly mention is Spider-Man and Batman both had cameos.
Okay, not Spider-Man. Agent Spider.
Yeah,
Agent Spider.
But it's still just Spider-Man.
And they got the GOAT. They got Josh Keaton, my man.
I haven't mentioned it yet on this channel, but recently, a few months ago, I watched Spectacular Spider-Man at his suggestion.
The best, or second best Spider, 1 or 2, with 94, the original Spider-Man animated series. One of the best Spider-Man cartoons ever.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was so good. Like, I knew it was gonna be good because I had heard things from, like, everybody, including him, about it. But I didn't expect to love that show as much as I did.
So good.
Like, Spectacular Spider-Man is phenomenal. So it's cool to see Josh Keaton voicing...
basically Spider.
Agent Spider. And then it's also cool to get the quick appearance. They don't say his name, but you know that's Batman.
Just remember, why would you name yourself Batman? Why would you name yourself... you dress up as a bat. It's kind of... counterintuitive, you know?
Don't you think it's kind of lazy? Like, yeah, that was just a really fun appearance. There you go. Those are all of our thoughts on Invincible Season 2.
Yeah.
So getting into our final score, I thought it was fantastic. I would give it a 9 out of 10.
9.5. Almost a 10. There's some problems, though. This show is fantastic. And remember, do not lose your virginity to a fish. In 5 hours, do not. Do not.
I'm sorry, I have to mention that actually, since he brought it up. That is legitimately one of the funniest, greatest episode titles I have ever seen.
And it is unironically, in my opinion, one of my favorite issues of the comic. I had the most fun reading that one out of any issue, because it's a lot funnier in the comic than it is in the show.
About it.
But yeah, just remember that.
Yeah,
don't lose your virginity
remember that always. And see ya, movie fan.
Bye, everyone.